had to lift me whenever he needed to change our bed sheets. It was as if a giant octopus was punching me from the inside with all of its tentacles at once. I heard my mother counting the babies. There were 9!
YouTube animations. A phrase that holds so much weight it's enough to make a grown man fear for his life. And well, today we're about to see why. Now, we're no stranger to bad animations on this channel. Matter of fact, we're quite the opposite. We've seen our fair share of horrible YouTube animations, but today we're reaching a new low. Allow me to introduce you to a channel called My Story. The more I see these channels, the more I realize that they cannot come up with an original name for the life of them. However, they do seem capable of coming up with some interesting stories, as we're about to see, with the totally real, 100% true story titled I Got Pregnant with 9 Babies at Once, and here's how I became a mom to them. I figured this was a fitting video for Mother's Day, but honestly, I'm kind of worried. You know, this title is a bit ominous if you think about it. Generally, if you give birth to a child, there's really not a need to explain how you became their mother. So the implication that there needs to be some sort of explanation here is a bit strange. But I think it's time to find out what this explanation is. Let's begin. Please subscribe.
Hi, my name is Lakshmi, and I'm going to tell you how I got pregnant with 9 babies at once, how I eventually brought them into the world, and how difficult it was for me to raise the bunch of them. I live a few miles away from a small town in an abandoned village. Our family was poor, just like all of our neighbors, really.
If you live in a village and you have neighbors, can you really consider it abandoned? I mean, I'm no zoning officer, but I feel like for something to be abandoned, it needs to be abandoned.
Our house was far from comfortable. The roof required major repairs every year, or the downpour would flood the clay floor and soak our beds. We had to work like horses to secure our habitat. My father would bring clay from the river and slap it upon the sticks that formed the roof structure. The walls were built out of cow chips that we collected on the streets.
Alright, so I had to look up what a cow chip is. Apparently, it is cow poop. Probably should have figured that one out on my own. But if you are repairing your house with cow chips and you have a cow, why do you need to find them on the streets? I mean, it just seems a bit counterproductive to me. If you have the ability to make your own cow chips, why leave it up to fate?
After drying them out, we faced the walls with the chips, and my father reinforced them with clay. We washed our dishes in the river, and that was where I met my future husband. His family had recently moved to our village and settled down right next to us.
Well, my goodness, you got settlers, new inhabitants. This doesn't sound too abandoned to me. Sounds like a growing, bustling community.
They had many children, most of them boys. The oldest son scoped me out immediately, and we didn't waste much time courting. Our parents bonded as well, so they got us married without pompous celebrations and dowries. My new husband and I made our home in an abandoned hut that was barely standing. We fixed it up a bit just to shelter ourselves from the wind and the rain.
I really can't tell if this is one of those robot voices or if it's a real woman reading off a script as quickly as possible. The tone and inflection is the same for every word, so it's kind of throwing me off. And every sentence ends like it's a question, and that hasn't changed the entire video, so it kind of makes me think this might not be a real voice.
We packed the floor with clay, threw a few straw mats under our feet, made a bed for ourselves, and this was the start of our married life. I cannot blame my husband for our poverty. He worked night and day as a bicycle rickshaw driver. The job didn't pay so well since he drove locals to the nearest town, not tourists. Plus, he had a dream to purchase a gasoline-powered rickshaw so he could make twice as much money. His goal made us scream.
Hold on. His goal made you what? I'm not the only person who heard that, right?
And save even harder when we were already struggling. 2 years passed, but we didn't have any children. I could see how upsetting it was to my husband and his parents, and I was excited to become a mother myself. So one day, I made an audacious move. After speaking to the local women—
yes, the local shadow people. Got an ominous cloud of smoke behind you and 2 spirits surrounding you. I don't think these are local townswomen. I think they are spirits from another realm. You might be hallucinating this.
I learned my best bet was the herb wife who lived in another village nearby. She'd helped many women conceive before. When I visited her, she handed me a bunch of herbs and gave me detailed instructions on taking them. When I followed her guidelines to no effect, the herb wife said I had a generational curse on me.
Yes, very detailed instructions. Wolf these down as fast as physically possible. There is nothing calculated about this. This is just speed eating. Are you sure you heard her correctly? And plus, I don't know if she's really trustworthy. Seems like a quick conclusion to come to. You eat 2 herbs, you don't get pregnant, so you must be cursed. Don't know if I buy it.
And I needed more than just herbs to lift it. She redirected me to a wise woman she knew who was skilled at removing curses. The wise woman told me to lie down on the bench, then she soaped up my belly, poured some hot water on top, and started twisting it. I couldn't wait for the 2-hour session to end, but I kept visiting her. Some weeks later, I felt a genuine change within me. 2 months later, I found out I was finally pregnant.
Are we really just gonna skip over why this woman was cursed? I feel like that's a much more interesting story, because obviously she had to do something, because if it was placed on the other women in her family, well then she wouldn't have been born. I feel like this is what we need to be exploring.
Our family celebrated the news. After 2 more months, I had difficulty walking. Then I could barely even get up. My belly was so huge at this point, it was obvious I was expecting more than one baby. We were really hoping for twins, but we couldn't afford a proper medical examination at a hospital. So all we could do was guess. Everyone in the village was terrified of my enormous belly.
Yeah, you know something's wrong when you even got the local shadow people afraid of you. They don't scare easily, so if you've managed to scare them, something is up. What?
When my father consulted the wise woman who treated me, she told him I was carrying a monster inside of me. My father and I got into a huge fight over this, so we hadn't talked to one another until recently.
Not much of a wise woman then, is she? If she didn't know that there are children? And why would the dad get mad at you? You didn't choose to have a monster, right?
Sometimes it felt like an epic battle in my womb. It was as if a giant octopus was punching me from the inside with all of its tentacles at once. My husband was terribly worried. He had to lift me whenever he needed to change our bed sheets. I used a wheelchair to go outside. Frankly, I wasn't even sure I was pregnant anymore. But we resigned ourselves to fate, whatever it had in store for us.
Well, my goodness, you could have at least given us some mystery. We know from the title that it's not a monster, so what is trying to be made here? There's no tension being made, there's no suspense. You literally titled it, I gave birth to 9 children. We know what's in there.
It began in the middle of the night. Excruciating pain shot through my back and into my underbelly. It was unbearable, and I screamed so loudly even my parents heard me. They rushed to our house wide-eyed with horror. A few minutes later, the local grandma showed up to assist the natural process.
Man, one thing that stays consistent with these kinds of channels is that they choose to focus on the weirdest details. I mean, we don't get to know how this woman got cursed, we don't get to see the wise woman's credentials, but I am glad that we know that the local grandma was there to assist with the natural process.
Less than an hour passed until our hut was filled with baby cries. All of the infants were squeaking in different voices, but I was so disoriented I could only hear the old woman wailing. After the storm of pain subsided, I heard my mother counting the babies. There were 9!
Alright, so I decided to look this up, and apparently there have been multiple cases of people giving birth to 8 children at once. Can you imagine? How do you even deal with the financial implications that having 8 children all at once brings? I mean, does the hospital charge for each child? You've now got 8 college funds, 8 new mouths to feed. How does anybody survive that? A TLC reality show? I mean, I don't get it.
Oh my god, my husband was standing transfixed on the bed full of children, repeating, "Oh no, not 5 sons at once!" I didn't have a lot of time to recover. The entire village brought us linen and fresh milk. I only had enough milk for the weakest of the infants. My 4 little girls only weighed 2 pounds each.
Yeah, okay, no, you're not supposed to feed a newborn child cow's milk? Not really how that works, but hey, I guess you got a few to spare, so, not a big deal, I suppose.
And all of them just kept squeaking. We were dead on our feet. I'm very grateful to our family and neighbors who came to care for the babies during the day. We would never manage on our own. Our children are almost 1 year old now. They're very independent-minded toddlers. Our neighbors' kids love playing with them. Some TV reporters have tried to get into our home to film a story about us, but we've outright refused all of them.
Why? You could be the next big hit on TLC. This is quite literally the only positive that comes out of having a large amount of children. You get a reality show, I mean, that is a given.
But I'm completely honest when I say our babies are precious to us. We aren't planning any more children, though. 9 is more than enough.
Yeah, probably a good idea. Next time you might have 10, and then you'd have 21, so probably not the best move. Well, that was horrible. Sorry that I've subjected you to watching this, but hey, I watched it, so, you have to too. It's only fair. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and walk on over to that subscribe button and touch it. It's free. It won't cost you anything. But for now, that's all I have for you today. Bye.
Subscribe.